Of course, I get a phone call right when that starts happening. So folks stream in. Welcome. A lot of new names on the list, I see. And welcome, everybody. All you new folks, we'll get going here in just 1 second. All you return visitors, welcome back. It's good to see you. If we're ready, why don't we get going?
Yeah, that sounds good.
All set?
Want to launch us today, Eric, or you want me to do it?
You launch it, Derek, in 3, 2, 1.
All right. Well, welcome everybody to another edition, episode 43 of Running into the Fog with the Johnson Brothers. Eric, how are you doing today?
Doing fine, Derek. Good to see you. We're back from a week off, and boy, am I ready to get going.
Well, I enjoyed our week off. It's moving. I've admitted before, and I'll admit it again, that this weekly tempo is taxing at least the younger brother, the younger Johnson. I don't know how it's doing for the elder one, but still a lot of fun.
I'm retired. I'm enjoying every minute of it. This is just perfect.
Well, maybe I'm in charge of too much of the guest outreach then. We can, I'll be happy to share that with you. The guest that we have today is a longtime friend of ours. I'm not going to say old friend because she's not old, and she just happens to be a longtime friend of ours. Judy Levitt, welcome to the podcast today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Derek. Eric, good to see you both. It's been a while.
Great to see you too.
It has been a while, and when we were thinking about having you on the podcast, Judy, obviously we can cover a number of different angles. You've got a long background in corporate libraries, academic libraries, knowledge management, competitive intelligence, strategy. I mean, the list of areas of both for-profit and not-for-profit types of environments that you've touched in your career of more than 38, 40 years, right? I know. We don't want to be too vocal about that, but just for our guests, they're really having quite a privilege here today to hear from somebody that's got the amount of experience that you do in, I'm going to call it in our game. And when I say in our game, I mean the game of market insights, competitive intelligence. And it's not every day that we get, on this podcast anyway, that we get people who are coming into this space and with as much direct experience in our game as you have. And I obviously acknowledge that you've been out of that game now for 6-7 years, retired from Rockwell Collins in 2015, if I have that right?
Yes, 7 years. Yeah.
Okay. And I guess we just look forward to the next 56 or 7 minutes together and kind of jamming on what you did in your career and what you've been doing, even more importantly, since that part of your time on Earth ended, and what's next for Judy. So Eric, do you have any opening questions?
Before we jump into that, I got to show something here quick, because Judy wrote a book during the pandemic, and we're going to be giving away one of those books during a raffle at the end of our hour together. For those of you returning visitors, you will recognize that we have a little process here where we put some tokens up called POAPs, Proof of Attendance Protocol Web3 crypto tokens, and you can scan that QR code to redeem the unthinkable token. Now, for those of you who stay for the second half of the hour, unspeakable, and if you become an interlocutor, you'll earn tokens for that as well. But those would be the tokens that are eligible to join the raffle that you see on the screen, which starts in 46 minutes. And we're going to let that raffle run the last 10 minutes of our hour together. And whoever's token is the winner there will receive a copy of Talking Tea, Casual Tea Drinker to Tea Connoisseur by Judith A. Levitt. So that's my only remark as we get going. Scan that QR code, and Judy, tell us what the impetus was behind the book. I know you said you wrote it during the pandemic. It'd be really, really interesting to hear how that whole thing got started.
Okay, well, it's kind of a long story. My love of tea actually started when I was about 10 years old. So we're talking about age. That's almost 65 years ago. So my love of tea, I'll just show you here. This is where my love of tea started, with this little blue teapot that belonged to my mom. It was a gift to her, a shower gift in 1945 from her best friend Maxine, or Mac as she called her. And in the first chapter of my book, I talk about how I got to my love of tea. And that was because when I was 10 years old, I was raised on a farm in southeastern Iowa. And one cold winter Sunday afternoon, after lunch and after church, my mom kicked us 5 kids outside. I'm sure she was tired and just needed a nap. So this was January. It was cold. We were bundled up. We ran around the farm for a while and came back in late afternoon and took all of our coats and mittens and boots and gloves off and everything. And then she made just a soft boiled egg and toast dinner for us, simple dinner. And then she put her little tea ball in the hall teapot and made tea, which I'd never had before. I loved it. I just loved it. And I drank tea through high school and college and when I lived in France. And I've only had tasted 2 cups of coffee in my entire life.
Wow.
Time was 1976. And I don't plan to either. So, just the older I got, the more I really liked tea. And in the early 90s, I started really becoming interested in tea as the industry and as a beverage and making it maybe at some point a career. And so I started going to tea conferences in Las Vegas, the World Tea Expo. It was called Take Me to Tea at that time. Collecting and reading books on tea. And then now I have about 350 books I've collected on tea. And I had always had this kind of plan in mind for years and years and years, even while I was working in corporate America. And so the retirement and COVID kind of allowed me to finally come to that point where I could make that a reality. So I had been reading these tea books for years and years, and I thought, well, I really want to be able to tell other people about tea. So how many kinds are there? I didn't know. Started reading through all my books and kind of kept distilling down. Well, it looks like there are 6 kinds: white, yellow, green, oolong, black, and pu'er. Okay, I know there's 6 types. How many kinds are there? The 6 types. And that's when I came up with my periodic table. These 48 teas were mentioned the most frequently in those 300 books that I read under those types of tea. So my daughter-in-law helped me get this into a really nice diagram, very usable diagram. And then I got a copyright on that in 2019. So that was setting me up then to go into business. And then 2020, I was just ready to start going out and doing tea presentations and tea tastings. And then COVID hit. So I thought, well, I'm stuck here at home, can't go anywhere. Nobody's coming in. What can I do? I think I'll write a book around my chart. So tell my personal stories about tea, and then also talk about these 48 teas, descriptions, deep descriptions of every one of them. How do you make good tea? Where is tea grown in the world? How do you find good tea? Where do you find it? So it's kind of an introduction for people who really would like to learn more about tea, but maybe are just novices or beginners.
That's a really interesting kind of setting of the table, the tea table, so to speak, Judy. And I noticed over your left shoulder, you have quite a stack of books.
Yeah.
What's going on? What's going on? Is that your research, or at least a portion of your research library going on there? Or what?
That's a small stack. I've got a bookshelf behind me, and then I've got some other things on the floor, all my tea books. I need another bookshelf. But a friend recently gave me this t-shirt, which fits me perfectly. It says, "One does not stop buying books just because there's no more shelf space." No.
That's right. That's a good one.
So the ones that are kind of behind me, I every once in a while I'm teaching a course or something new comes up and I want to learn about just Chinese teas or just Chinese green teas or just certain kinds of Japanese green tea. So then I have to go back to all my books and kind of scan through them again and pick up information. So I'm getting ready to put together like a class just on oolong teas. So back to the books and doing the research.
Pardon the pun, but you need a t-shirt so I can wear it on the next broadcast here with your book cover on it.
I think this is what I should put on the t-shirt. I thought about that. Yeah.
That's exactly perfect. I'd pay $30 for something like that. You got it.
Well, I have extended it to my brand to a teacup.
There you go. I love it.
Yeah, and to note cards. So I'm trying to extend the branding.
That's great. Well, put out a t-shirt and I'll buy one for sure.
There you go. Okay.
Next time on the live stream. Well,
I'll put that on my mind map, which is my my plan.
That's awesome.
Okay, great.
Speaking of planning, tell us about how you got from the library into planning, into intelligence and strategy and all that fun stuff. Tell us about your Rockwell career and unpack that a little bit for us. And then I'll just once again invite our participants on the bridge. We need 3 interlocutors for the second half. So get your questions ready and, nominate yourself to join us. And we'll turn Judy over to you in the second half.
Great. Well, I actually started out in corporate libraries. So I got my degree in French from University of Iowa, which was no education degree. So what was I going to do? So I went to, we moved to Lafayette, Indiana. So I started working at the Purdue University Library. I got to use my French degree a little bit and learn a little Russian on the way and everything, and had a good time there for 6 years. And one of the librarians I worked with was really encouraging me to go a step further. So when we lived in Indianapolis for a year, I drove back and forth for a year to Bloomington, Indiana, to Indiana University to get my master's in library science. So that when we moved eventually to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and I got the job at Rockwell Collins, then I had that degree to carry forward their first ever degreed librarian in the corporation.
Wow.
So it was really fun. It was fun and fascinating. And, we went, when I started there in 82, it was the card catalog yet. We went from a card catalog to the collections on CD-ROM to, completely online catalog with all 18 Rockwell libraries at that time across the country. So even in a short period of time, less than one generation, you see tremendous change. But in the middle of that kind of, my friend Nancy Korber, you may have known Nancy Korber.
Nancy sounds familiar, yeah.
Yeah, she was at Allen Bradley, and so part of Rockwell. And she told me about Skip. I'd not heard about Skip, and I attended the first meeting and got very intrigued. So another colleague from Rockwell and I came back to Rockwell after our first meeting at Skip and said, this looks really fascinating. It looks like something very beneficial to the company. I think we should be doing this here. And so we grew that capability at Rockwell over the next maybe 15 years. So half of my career at Rockwell was in the corporate library and half in competitive intelligence in the strategy group.
Wow.
Fun job. I loved my career at Rockwell. I got to travel a lot and participate in national groups and meet lots of fantastic people. And I think probably the highlight of my career was a year or so before I retired, when I was on the team that studied at that time our biggest acquisition ever. So that was really fantastic to be a part of that team and use all the skills from librarianship and Skip competitive intelligence skills together to support that team.
Super exciting. Well, I remember, I don't know what year it was, so I won't date either of us, but it was a while back. We were both on the Skip board, I think, at the time together. And I remember you sharing the story about how you're planning ahead for your retirement and you're going to go into the tea business. And I was super interested in that. Like, yeah, the whole corporate CI thing is really interesting. Don't get me wrong. But boy, finding what your passion is and how you turn that passion into a business is just something that intrigued me. And what stuck with me was your consistency. Here we are, Lord knows how many years later, and you're doing it, sister. This is really, really fun to see.
Well, and you mentioned the word passion. That's absolutely what it is. I keep telling people I meet, nobody should be allowed to have this much fun doing what I'm doing. It is so much fun. And I've always been a learner, from kindergarten on. So I feel like every day I'm still learning something new about tea. It's very similar to wine. It's an agricultural product. It's like terroir. Where is it grown in the world? That influences things. There are 48 teas on my chart, but those are just the 48 major kinds. There's, thousands of other cultivars, they call them. And I have to stop at some point because I just get real nerdy about it at some point, and go down in the weeds because I just love it so much. So when I'm teaching tea classes, I'll show you, have all these little white dishes and I have people get their noses right down in their tea and breathe on it so you can smell it. So this one I'm having this morning is lovely, just lovely.
What is that you're drinking? What's that called?
It's called Da Hong Pao, a big red robe, the Chinese oolong. And it's amazing, all the way from the yellows and the green teas to the black teas and the oolongs, the different flavors, the different aromas. In fact, on the back of my tea chart, I have this aroma wheel. So when I'm teaching the classes online, I have people smell the dry tea first when they open it up, Then we infuse it, then smell the infused leaves, then smell and taste the tea liquor, it's called itself, and then try to guess on that flavor feel, or try to make an estimate. You know, is it woody? Is it spicy? Is it sweet? So it's really a lot of fun. And the most fun I have is when somebody becomes another tea drinker. I met a woman a year ago, one of my tea classes, Dorothy, who's attended a couple of classes, and then I had an email from her about a week ago. She said, "Okay, you've turned me into a tea monster." She went on vacation and she went to a tea room and she bought lots of tea and she bought a teapot. So that's what my goal is. You know, my mission is to, first of all, to connect people to tea, to really good quality tea, and then to connect people to each other over the tea table or tea talk.
Maybe you'll create some tea monsters amongst our audience participants today,
so.
Judy.
I hope so.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a question for you. You know, when you think about this passion area, you know, post corporate retirement, right?
Mhm.
Are there one or two or three or more skills that you honed in your time as a corporate librarian and strategist and competitive intel expert that you would say helped you make that transition more efficiently into the world of being an entrepreneur and an author and different things? Anything there that you might share with our audience today that maybe, if you have people on the thread today that maybe have similar ambitions, whether it be, you know, a side hustle during their regular career or for someday down the road when they reach that same phase that you reached 7 or so years ago, what are some of those, I guess, core skills that you think might translate well between your old field and your new passion area?
I think at least 2 or 3. The first couple I can think of would be the research capabilities, which certainly I got from my librarianship background. Researching markets and market research and learning, you know, for example, the tea industry, when I started really becoming interested in the early 90s in the United States, was about $3 billion. Now it's 13 billion. So, you know, tracking a market, watching a market, researching the market, where's it going? Young men are now becoming really great tea drinkers. So knowing that that's your market, perhaps. So just the research skills and the competitive intelligence skills, I think that I learned on the job at Rockwell Collins. And the marketing skills too. I'd never had a course in marketing, but learning through all the people I worked with at Rockwell Collins who were in the marketing area about how to segment your market, how to approach your market, distribution, the products, that kind of thing. So a lot of good skills learned in the corporate arena. The thing that I think I couldn't learn there would just be the passion for this industry, you know, the tea industry, the product itself, the drinking of it every single day, all day long, so that you start to learn about it. And that's probably, I would think, inherent maybe to a lot of entrepreneurs, is that desire to learn, you know, just to learn and to keep learning and to get really deep into something.
Right. That's really cool. We already have a couple of questions coming in the chat if you're watching that, as I am. And Jonathan's I'm going to just put Jonathan's questions on the spot here. What's your favorite type of tea? Or does that depend on the day, depend on the way you feel?
That's exactly, you know, I get asked that question so often, and it's, I don't know, other people may get asked, who's your favorite child or something like that. But it does, it depends on the day. And it sounds a little silly perhaps, but every night before I go to bed, I start to think, oh, yay, I get to get up tomorrow morning and I get to do my meditation again, which I do every single morning. And I get to have tea again. So then I look at my chart and say, well, which one of my teas do I want to have tomorrow? What am I feeling like? You know, something green or white, light. I feel like I really need a little push to want a black tea. So yeah, it kind of depends on my mood, the day, what I need to do that day. But it's just so much fun to go pick something. And I actually kind of do that at night thinking, oh, yay, tomorrow morning I get to have this tea. So.
Do you ever watch the weather pattern and take that into account? Like, what's the weather going to be like, and how might a tea lift me up in a gloomy day versus a sunny day, that type of thing?
You know, speaking about learning, there's a publication I subscribe to, the Global Tea Hut. It's this guy in Taiwan. He is really, really deep into the weeds about tea and the fire it's made on and where it's made on, the time of day and the seasons and everything. And I'm just beginning to learn from him. But yes, yeah, if it's a rainy day, I'll probably want something a little more robust, like a black tea or a pu'er.
Cool. Eric, what other questions do you have for Judy before
Well,
we,
I'll just share. First of all, thank you, audience. We've got our 3 interlocutors picked. Suki, Jonathan, and Teresa will be your interlocutors in the second half Unspeakable. Tom Tao mentioned that Big Red Robe is one of the most expensive teas in China. And Tom and I have actually spent a day in a tea house in Xi'an not too many years ago, drinking tea. Like, I didn't think I could hold that much tea. Maybe I didn't hold it very long, but I remember fondly, Tom, that that day we spent in Xi'an Tea House. But comments, Judy, that was Tom's remark.
Yes. So did you get tea drunk?
I was pretty amped, I'll say, by the time I got rolled out of there. Yeah.
That's actually a term, but it doesn't really mean in the alcohol sense, but it means just euphoria, just a great euphoria because you've had a lot of tea. Yeah.
Well, it was a very slow afternoon, as I recall, and the owner of the tea shop came out and just hung out with us and like spent as much time as we cared to spend there with her. And it was just a lovely, lovely, intimate encounter. I think that's what kind of as a novice tea drinker, by the way, I've drank more coffee in a day than you've had in your whole life, Judy. But I will say the intimacy that I think tea has as one of its social expectations. You think of the British Empire and kind of 3 o'clock or 3:10 or so rolls around and you've got that cup of tea to sort of pick you up for the remains of the day. That the social and kind of cultural side of tea is just really, really fascinating to me.
It is. And so it can be very relaxing. It can be energizing, but you're right. The part of having it with friends or family or taking tea to someone who's having a bad time for whatever reason, health reasons or something like that, it's kind of a ministry in a way too, at least I think of it that way, encouraging people to come together and join together over tea and then share things.
Wow, that's lovely.
But I'm envious of your trip. I would like to go to India. I have a daughter-in-law who's from India, and I would love to go with her to some of the Indian tea estates that I've learned about. Unfortunately for me, her family has a coffee plantation in India.
Oh, wow. Well, wrong side of the tracks, as they say.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But she indulges me. They live in, my son and daughter-in-law and grandson live in New York City, and she indulges me when I go to New York City. She always finds a brand new place for us to go for tea, something really fun. And the last time was 2 years ago, right before COVID hit. I was in New York City, and she arranged a private tea tasting at an oolong tea store. Before the tea store opened, the young owner treated us to an hour-and-a-half private tea tasting of 5 oolongs. That was something I'll never forget. That was really wonderful.
Wow, how cool. Well, I will share. Marilyn asked the question, please share your opinions on organic versus not and loose versus bag. And, the Philistine in me says it doesn't always come in a bag, but, there, I've broken the ice on that one.
Let me address the second question first, the loose versus bag. That's one of the reasons that I'm doing this tea education, is to try to bring people from tea bags to loose leaf tea, tea that looks like this. When it's infused will be even longer. The leaves might be this long and this wide. The tea bags have a different grade of tea in it. It's called dust or fannings, and that's what's kind of left after they make this good tea. So they can put it in the tea bag, so it's little tiny particles, which means it infuses very rapidly and can get bitter and astringent very quickly. So once people start drinking what I call good tea, premium tea, specialty teas, they'll start to notice a difference very quickly, I think. And now I've forgotten the first question.
Organic versus not organic, I think.
Yeah, that's a big issue in the industry. Of course, many of the tea sellers that I buy from are doing organic things. It's a little more expensive, makes the tea a little more expensive because they have lots of steps to go through to get that organic certification. But a lot of the tea companies that I've been buying from are also very concerned about labor issues, sustainability, the organic. It's really becoming a whole different business model for them. And in my mind, it's worth paying more for their tea because that's matching my values too. So I'm willing to pay a little more for my tea. A lot of times the teas I buy might be 25, 35, 55, 60 cents per cup. The one I'm drinking this morning is $2.30 a cup.
Wow.
It's worth it. It's worth it because you can infuse it more than one time. So that brings it to $1.15 a cup, third time. Right. So, sometimes you get what you pay for, and it's worth paying for something really, really good. And I always tell people when I'm teaching tea classes, so you paid $1 for that cup of tea. How much did you pay for the last cup of coffee you bought at Starbucks?
Yeah, $8 exactly.
Yeah.
Judy, you mentioned this marketplace I think you meant worldwide, but it might have been isolated to North America or even the U.S. being a move from 3 billion in market size to 13. Do I have that correct?
That's the U.S. market.
That's
right.
just the U.S. market.
Yeah.
So it's going to become, if it hasn't already, a highly competitive environment for market share.
Mhm.
Do you foresee a day where you might be approached, maybe have been already, to be essentially a tea thought leader for a specific provider of tea out there? Does that type of thing happen in your space? And I guess I'm just curious if that is something that interests you at all, or if maintaining your independence so that you can truly be across the board independent about tea recommendations, if that's more important to you.
It is more important to me to maintain that independence as a tea educator. One of my goals is to be a speaker at one of the national conferences. Definitely, that would be a goal, maybe even for next year. But I want to be able to talk about all the teas that I find across the world. There are like 20 vendors I go to on a regular basis. I'm always learning about more, and I would hate to be restricted to just saying these are the best teas from one vendor. I think that would be very restrictive.
Right. Yeah, that was the answer I assumed I would get. But I just wanted to put that out there because it kind of struck me that this market is becoming so large, and obviously exponentially larger than that if you count ex-US, right?
Yeah.
And I would imagine if you haven't already, you're going to get approached more and more as your reputation in this industry only continues to grow. Pretty cool. Eric, any other questions before we kind of get ready to release our interlocutors to Judy here in a few minutes? I think you might be muted, big brother.
Oh.
There you go.
Of course. It's my first online meeting of the pandemic.
And I notice you guys never miss a chance to dig each other, do you?
No, no.
Brother, who else would if it weren't for us? So for those of you streaming on social, scan that QR code and you can register to join the second half of the hour called Unspeakable. If you join Unspeakable, you'll learn a POAP and you'll be able to potentially win a copy of Judy's book about talking tea. I'm going to show you another screen here. This will take you to this page. And if you type core.vc/fog, that will take you to the specific event page that we have going on here with Judy, or it should. It's supposed to take you here, where you can register and then join us for that second half. But I think we're going to say goodbye to all the folks on social in about 1 minute. I'm going to be upgrading Suki Fuller to join us here. Suki mentioned that it's been some years since she hung out with you, Judy.
Yes.
So Suki, I'm going to be upgrading you here right now.
Be great to see her again.
And then Suki, you have Judy for the next 10 minutes. And I'm going to close that screen share. And welcome, Suki Fuller. I'm going to bring you up into Spotlight. And there we go. We got your video now. Suki is in.
Hi, Suki.
Welcome, Suki.
Hey, Suki.
Okay, Derek and Eric, go away.
Where are you located now?
I'm over in the UK. I'm just
I thought
outside.
you were.
Yeah, you look great. I'm impressed with this retirement. I love how you retired, but you didn't actually retire, did you?
No, I call it my third stage. And I kind of figured from age 1 to like 30